with the free agent additions that have already been made and the additional draft capital acquired by Joe Douglas, is it inevitable that the Jets are looking to revamp their offensive line for Aaron Rodgers through the draft? What's up, everybody? My name is Dylan Tereman, and welcome to a special draft edition of JetNation Radio. I'm going to be flying solo on this one, giving a positional preview of the interior offensive line position, specifically center. Obviously, we know Connor McGovern has not been signed as of the recording of this podcast, which is Monday night at 7 p.m. So it looks like the Jets are either going to sign another mid-tier free agent and add through the draft. And I'm going to explain a couple of guys that I think, outside of the big dog of John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota, I want to talk about a couple of prospects that I think they could target in rounds 2 through 4 and just give a little landscape of the position, so to speak. So my first guy here, Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin. If you listen to our Thursday live show with Glenn Naughton and I, we did our first mock draft 1.0, and we decided to go ahead and take Joe Tippmann with the 43rd overall pick. That was the second pick in the second round, now that the Jets are picking back-to-back thanks to the Elijah Moore trade to Cleveland. And Joe Tippmann, I mean, sheer size, 6'6", 313 pounds, good on the move for his size. He was rarely on the ground, and I think that's one thing that when you're looking at offensive linemen, on the ground is one of the main things everybody writes down in their scouting report. Does he have the balance? Can he stay upright on his feet? Is he always falling over? Now, obviously, when you're pancaking a defender into the ground, it's okay to fall on the ground as an offensive lineman, but are you always falling down, needing to be picked up at the end of every play? Joe Tippmann was not that, certainly. I thought he was excellent at getting to the second level. I do believe he has some guard versatility at the next level. I think he should come in and play center right away, but if he comes in and starts guard for a team that has a center and then works his way into a full-time center position, I think that would be ideal. I have a couple clips here that I'm going to share. First one here. Obviously, he's center. No need to figure out where he lines up. He's going to swallow the middle linebacker to his left is going to suck down to fit the run scheme, and he does a very good job of avoiding what he looks like he was going to defend. One guy came off and defended him instead, and the running back was able to break free for an explosive gain. So I'll slow it down a little bit here. As you see, he springs the explosive run, but you see him get out of his stance. Sees nothing in front of him, looks to go downfield to the second level, goes towards his right, but he sees number 78, the right tackle or right guard, has the middle linebacker on the right-hand side, so he quickly shifts his focus to this guy. As soon as he makes contact, that linebacker's screwed. Running back's able to slip in, kind of uses the referee to his advantage to get past the safety, and he's off and running. So Joe Tippmann does that type of thing for your offense. Obviously, I said sheer size, 6'6". I think if you're able to have a combination of him, Elijah Vera Tucker at right guard, and then Mekhi Becton or Max Mitchell at right tackle, I think that's an ideal right side of your offensive line. Here you're going to see Joe Tippmann in space. Unfortunately, that defensive back had absolutely no chance. You're going to see him just kick out into space. This is shades of Mekhi Becton versus Carolina in his first game, which I think every Jets fan misses and wants back. So Joe Tippmann, to me, he's not a perfect center prospect. Far from it, obviously. I think if you're going to go for a top dog, you want John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota, but Joe Tippmann is a good quality second-round offensive lineman that, like, we took in the 43rd pick. That 40 to 50 range, I think, is going to be the sweet spot for him. He could go a little bit higher. I know Daniel Jeremiah on his latest mock draft took him at 25 to the New York Giants over John Michael Schmitz. So that was his center one in his mock draft. So something to keep an eye on with Tippmann, because I think teams could fall in love with what he has to bring to the table. The second guy, I wanted to bring up another name that I think Jets fans should be familiar with. Jets fans are very smart when it comes to the draft, so no prospect really goes under the radar with them, I promise. So Luke Whippler, Ohio State, kind of the same mold of Joe Tippmann. He's not going to be that first round hyped guy, but I think if you could get him in the mid to back half of round 2, I think that's a good fit for him there. 6'3", 303 pounds, so just slightly shorter than Joe Tippmann. I think he brings the most zone scheme experience with him from Ohio State. You always see him, they call it elephants on parade, snap the ball, and then just 4 offensive linemen just turn and do the exact same thing. So I think that's kind of a staple in Luke Whippler's game. I have a couple clips of him here. Here's a pancake on a pull. You see him out in space a lot. I thought at first I wasn't going to like him in space. The first game I watched from him, I wasn't very impressed. However, it was Georgia, so that is a tall task, obviously, especially when it's your first game watching a prospect. Here he is against Iowa. He's pulling to his left. He comes out, finds 34 in space, takes him straight to the ground. I think that's, a big part of his game. Glenn Naughton, my co-host, he pointed out when you're an offensive lineman and you're pulling, you just want to make contact. And there's so many times, even at the NFL level, where guys are pulling and they're just not making contact. So for him to make contact, drive, turn him around, just flip him right there on his back, explosive run for the running back. Huge play there. We got another one, more zone blocking from Whippler. Here we go. Moving to his right. And this one is one of my favorite runs by Whippler. He creates that cutback lane, but I think what's so important and goes unnoticed slightly is when he's about to make contact, it looks like he's going down to the 3 technique in front of the right guard. It looks like he's going to go down, and then right here you see him dip his left shoulder just a bit, get underneath the pads of that defensive tackle there, create leverage for himself, popping up, and then driving his feet. Look where the running back goes, right behind his feet. Obviously, he gets tripped up there a little bit by 80-something on Iowa, but it's still a 10, 11-yard gain created by Luke Whippler. Zone blocking schemes. I think that's going to be something that the Jets could really fall in love with if they aren't going to sign a veteran. I know Wes Schweitzer is on a 2-year deal, $5 million. He's not going to be starter quality. I would comp him, if you're looking at the Jets roster last year, to a Nate Herbig. He's going to be a guy that could come in. Now, I know Nate Herbig produced very well last year, so I don't know if you could expect that type of quality production out of a Schweitzer, but I would say he's more of the Nate Herbig replacement, whereas Tristan Colon from Baltimore would be more of your Dan Feeney replacement on a shorter one-term deal up to $1.6 million. So you're really not going to worry about having to play Tristan Colon too much. Obviously, if you have to play Schweitzer, you would hope that he can get you out of a game at guard or center, which is what he has done for the Commanders. So that's what Whippler, mid to late second round, like I said. And then the last guy here, kind of a late second rounder, maybe even an early third rounder. I'm not quite sure where to put him, and that's because his measurables for some teams are just going to be a little off-putting. And that's Victor Luitimi from Michigan. When I say his measurables, I purely mean his hand size. His hand size is 8 5/8 inches, which according to Mock Draftable would be the 0th percentile in their database. And I think that goes back over 20 years now to 1999. So not necessarily a great look. If your center has small hands, he's the one that has to touch the ball every play and get it to the quarterback. He did have a couple issues at the Senior Bowl. Dom C, friend of the pod, did point out he did have a couple snapping issues on one of the days at the Senior Bowl. Not necessarily a hand issue, but if his hand issue is a red flag for teams, they're going to look at that and say, well, we don't want to take that risk for our team. The Jets could very well find themselves in that bucket. We're not sure yet, but I think Victor Luitimi in the third round could be a very good center option. And despite those small hands, I think the first thing I wrote down, especially from the Senior Bowl, was his grip strength. He was able to grab onto the defensive lineman, and mirror and match is not a term that offensive linemen use, but I'm going to use it here. He was able to just mirror the defensive lineman and keep that grip on him. So it was good to see that despite his small hands, he was able to make the best of it, and he did have good strength. That strength didn't follow through to the rest of his body, however, and I feel like he needs to play with more overall strength. There were times where I felt like he could have, he's standing there looking for work, which is a term when offensive linemen don't have somebody standing in front of them. They're just chopping their feet, looking to find somebody to block. there were times where he could have just punished a guy off the guard, and he just kind of leaned into him and gave him a soft shoulder. So I want to see a little bit more, pop in his pads, power at the point of attack from Victor Luitimi. But I do think he has, if you look at Michigan, they're a very run-heavy team. Blake Corum, their running back, phenomenal running back, and he was clearing plenty of open holes for Corum. I have a couple clips here of Luitimi, if I can figure out my computer. Here we go. Here's a red zone block right here. He just absolutely takes out I believe that's the linebacker that's walking up on him. Yep, number 43 right in the hole. He just takes him, just tosses him aside, and Blake Corum's able to get down to the 1 or 2 yard line there, 6-yard gain. So just little things like that Luitimi does. I'm not going to say he's an all-world prospect and a plug-and-play starter year one, but here he is on the move for Blake Corum. I like the way that he was able to turn his hips, seal off that defender there. I'll slow it down a little bit. He gets out, him in the guard. I believe that's a power. Gets his pads on him, able to turn his hips, seal him off. That guy was nowhere near the play. Blake Corum gets an easy first down. So Victor Luitimi is another guy. 3 prospects there for the 2nd to 3rd round. We'll call them day 2 guys, all in that same bucket. Now, that's not all the center prospects, obviously. You're going to have your Steve Avila's from TCU, who's also a guard. He's probably going to fit that mold of a guard year 1 and 2, and then possibly transition to center if the team needs him. Emil Ekiyor from Alabama, he was another guard that took center reps in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. So, you have Ricky Stromberg from Arkansas. So you have a ton of guys there that if you don't take John Michael Schmitz in the 1st round, you have options. Ideally, if I was the Jets, I'm personally a little bit more okay with their tackle position as it currently stands with Brown, Becton, and Mitchell. So what I would do is trade back in the 1st round, try to acquire John Michael Schmitz, and then come back to get that tackle depth in the 2nd round. I believe there should be at least a starter level tackle in the 2nd round. But if they don't, and they go with the traditional, let's take a tackle at 13 pick, maybe Broderick Jones, you come right back with your 1st or 2nd round pick, and you take a center. And I think any of these guys, obviously a Luitimi might not be, valued at that high of a spot. But if you could take any of these guys, I think they would make a difference, plug-and-play style centers. McGovern obviously was, a top maybe 20 center last year for the Jets. And I think people don't realize how important the center position is sometimes. And if you can get a center in the 2nd round on a cheap rookie deal, similar to what the Chiefs did with Creed Humphrey, you're just setting your team up for success. They want to revamp this offensive line, and I understand putting rookies in front of potentially Aaron Rodgers is not the most ideal thing you could do. But when you have a strong center class like this with Schmitz, Tippmann, Whippler at the top, specifically those 3, those guys can all be day 1 starters, in my opinion. So I think it's a matter of time. They could trade those picks for Rodgers, and we have no 2nd round picks to spend on a center. If that's the case, we'll come back and do another video. Let me know in the comments how you guys like the format of this video. I'm going to try a couple more position groups before the draft starts. We're about a month out at this point. So if I could do about 4 more positions of needs for the Jets, shout them out in the comments. Anything specific or players specifically you want me to highlight, I'll try to highlight at least 2 or 3, maybe 4 prospects from each position, because everybody knows the top guys. Like I said, you Jets fans are too smart with the draft. You guys are ahead of it before anybody is. So if there's any guys that you haven't heard or haven't seen a breakdown of, I'll try my best to get a couple clips up for you. Until then, you'll catch us on our Thursday show, Glenn Naughton and I, 6:30 p.m. on YouTube live, JetNation Live. We'll be there. If any news happens in between, I'm sure Glenn will break it down, big or small. Until then, appreciate everybody tuning in, and let's go Jets.